the second most famous chapter in David's life, the incident with Bathsheba. And there are all kinds of questions and ideas. Some time and an in-depth look at it. Our study today brings us to 2 Samuel chapter 11. One of the most famous is sin. I say one second most famous. I think the most famous thing about second place. It is the lowest point in David's life. It may not even be the most damaging, but it's certainly the most, and probably rightfully so. It shocks us because we didn't expect this from David. And there are two child dies as well, so really there's just two innocent people that die. And then as the in the aftermath of this, if you consider this an earthquake, the aftershocks result in even more people dying. So this is a major incident, and it should be understood. But for today, I just want to introduce you to it, and I want to do it in a somewhat of a different way, because a lot of the information we have about this incident is secondhand. Somebody told somebody who told somebody. I guarantee you, it's entertaining enough that you will not. I'm not going to lose your attention. I don't think. The soap operas have nothing on 2 Samuel chapter 11, frankly. The Bible is rich in every way, including in drama and intrigue. And here's a sample of it. 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. It happened in the spring of the year, at the time when kings went out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. So this incident happens in the spring. In the winter, countries would settle down, kingdoms would settle in, armies would go back home, and they would stay home during the winter. Spring came out, and the armies would go out and reestablish the frontiers or the borders of their nation. When the stronger nation Verse 2, and it happened one evening that as David watched on the roof of the king's house, so it happened in the middle of the night. This night he couldn't sleep. He gets up and goes to the rooftop. It was very beautiful to behold. So David sent and inquired about the woman. And someone said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" It's interesting that David saw this woman bathing in the middle of the night. We'll talk more about this next week, because we're wondering, A, why is she taking a bath in the middle of the night? B, why is he gawking? C, why isn't there a curtain? All kinds of questions come to mind right here, right now. But this, we talk a lot about, in our church, we use the word divine setup or divine appointments. Well, there are divine appointments and there are satanic appointments. There are divine setups and there are satanic setups. And this is the world would call it coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. It's either a setup by God or it's a setup by Satan. And here is a setup by Satan. All these things, unusual things, happen at the same time in the exact same spot. Too much of a coincidence. There's something more going here. There's a plot going on here. And as the story unfolds, we find out indeed that there is a plot, and it unfolds, and David is trapped. David and Bathsheba. Another note here, just in passing, verse 3. Notice that David is warned when he asks about such and such house. It's Bathsheba, the wife, hint, hint, the wife, underline, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Now, Uriah, incidentally, at the end of David's life, there's going to be a list of mighty men, people who helped him establish his kingdom, men of honor, feet, men who stood out as worthy of special recognition. Guess who's on that list? Uriah the Hittite is. So Uriah the Hittite is not just another man, and it would have been wrong if this was just another man, but he's not just another soldier, and it would have been wrong already if it was just another soldier. But Uriah is a trusted helper, close soldier. I was going to say close friend. We don't know if we can say close friend. But he is one of the elite soldiers in David's army. We might call him today part of his personal entourage. This would be the Secret Service that spends a whole lot of time with the president. It'd be the equivalent here. So Uriah he's a known quantity, we might say. He's someone that David knows personally. So again, verse 3, who is the woman that lives in such and such house? She is Bathsheba, the daughter of so-and-so, the wife of Uriah. All right. You would think that this would, again, this should trigger the flag goes up, the warning, explosion about to take place. But we're surprised that in verse 4, then David sent messengers and took her. You don't expect that from David, but it happened. He sent a messenger, a servant, to bring her to him. Now, Old Testament, no sin has been committed yet, because the law says people talk about how grace is so much better, so much easier. Yes, it is so much better. I'm not sure that it's so much easier. Because in New Testament, Jesus says, if you look at a woman and lust after her, you've already committed adultery. So as far as by New Testament standards, he's already hooked. He's already sinned. By Old Testament standards, he's one step away from sinning. But he's about to cross that step too. Verse 4. She came to him, and here we go. Here's where he crosses the line. He lay with her, for she was cleansed from her impurity, and she returned to her house. This is what, and I don't mean to be flippant about this, because this is too serious and too ugly to be flippant about, but this is what you might call, what today would be called a one-night stand. This was a one-night, spur-of-the-moment incident. But, verse 5, to our surprise, and she conceived. And she conceived. I did a little research on the odds of a woman conceiving in a one-night encounter. It's no need to get into details, but it's not something that happens every time. As a matter of fact, and again, I'll get to that in a second, but the odds of a woman becoming pregnant in a one-night stand are fairly small. They're significant. But my point is, he is betting that he's not going to get found out. He's betting that it's going to be okay. It's a one night of indiscretion. What could go wrong? sure she can get pregnant, but what are the odds? We don't know if all these thoughts have gone through his head, but this is David. He's a asked about her. He sent someone to bring her. There's some premeditation going on here. And he's batting against the house. Well, guess what? The house beat him. The house always does. We're just getting acquainted with the story, and we'll come to conclusions next week. But this is, it's hard not to draw a conclusion here. Never bet against sin, because you lose every time. The wages of sin is death, and it always is death. David bets against the house, and he's going to lose. Verse 5, and the woman conceived. So she sends a message to David. She sends a note. I'm pregnant. Verse 6. This is stuff out of, you see it in Hollywood. Verse 6. Then David sent Uriah the Hittite, and Joab sent Uriah to David. You're surprised here. Message from the lady saying, I am pregnant. He calls the husband home. And you say, oh, wait a minute. He's probably the last person you want to see right now. But David's got a plan. David's got a plan. Verse 7. And it's a devious plan, by the way. Verse 7. And when Uriah had come to him, David asked how Joab was doing, and how the people were doing, and how the war prospered. And David said to Uriah, go down to your house, wash your feet. So Uriah departed from the king's house, and a gift of food from the king followed him. Let's pause here for a second. David asks General Joab to send Uriah home. Uriah comes home, reports to the king. The king says, how's the war going? How's Joab? How are the troops? Oh, everyone's fine. We fought the battle honorably. We're winning. David says, very well, soldier, go home. Go home, wash your feet. In other words, kick back, relax, watch some TV. You've earned it. And then behind him, David sends servants with a banquet. This is like sending a man and a woman, a husband and wife, to the president and saying, okay, order room service, and you guys just have a honeymoon. You've earned it. This is what's going on. David is setting him up for an evening with his wife. So Uriah departed from the king's house, and a gift of food from the king followed him. You can bet there was lots of wine on that food, on that tray. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. Oops, David didn't expect this. Uriah said, yes, sir, left the palace, but instead of going home, he slept on the outside door of the palace. And he'll tell us why in a second. So when they told David, saying Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, did you not come from a journey? In other words, haven't you been gone from home for several weeks? Did you not go down to your house? Why wouldn't you go home? And Uriah said to David, listen to this. The ark and Israel and Judah are dwelling in tents. My lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go to my house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing. King, I just came from the battlefield. My brothers at arms tonight are fighting. They're sleeping under the star. They're sleeping on the floor. They're using a rock as a pillow. How could I go home and spend the night in the comfort of the care of my wife, knowing that I can't do that? Wouldn't be right. Wow. This is a truly honorable man. Interesting, he's not even a Jew. He's not even an Israelite. He's a Hittite. The Hittite is a neighboring nation, a pagan nation. Somehow, the Bible does not give us the details, but this man, Uriah, fell in love with an Israelite and married her and came to serve the God of Israel. And we know this because he mentions the tent of the Lord, the tabernacle. He's a man who reveres the tabernacle. He reveres Yahweh. He reveres Jehovah. He serves God. So he says, how could I go home when God lives in a tent? A tent. How can I go home? This wouldn't be right. I can't do this. So David quick on his feet. So he thinks a way around this. Okay, he won't go of his own volition. Left to his own decision, he won't go home. Well, let's deal with his volition. Then David said to Uriah, wait here today also, and tomorrow I will let you depart. So David says, okay, you stick around one more day, and tomorrow you go back to the battlefield. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. Now when David called him, he ate and drank before him, and he made him drunk. So here's what David does. Okay, you won't go home and spend a night with your wife. You won't go home and eat there. I'll make you eat in my house. So David invites Uriah to the banquet. And Uriah is too loyal of a servant to say no to the king. So he goes to the banquet, probably sheepishly. He probably sits at the table and this pressure is set up by David for him to eat. So he eats, and they pour him a drink, and he him another drink and said, why don't you have another one? Come on, the king is looking at you. And they made him drunk. What would this drunk man do? Would he lose his honor now? What would the drunk man do? Alcohol removes our inhibitions. In other words, when you're drunk, you do the things that you would not normally, your brain would stop you from doing. By the way, this is, and the world plays this thing all the time. This is why many business meetings happen in places where alcohol is served. Because the person who's trying to sell you something knows that if you drink enough alcohol, you will take chances that you wouldn't otherwise take. You'll make decisions that you would not otherwise make. So they're not trying to be nice to you. They're not serving you cocktails because they taste good. They're serving you cocktails because they want to get you drunk, or at least lightheaded, so that you make some decisions that you would otherwise not do. Ladies, by the way, be careful. Men will do that too. And men, by the way, be careful. Ladies will do that to you too. I'm telling you, sin is everywhere. Sin is dangerous. So David, and by the way, folks, as we look at David, he is a prototype. The technical word is prototype, which basically means a shadow. He's a shadow of Christ. He's not a shadow of Christ. He's a shadow of Satan. He is doing what Satan does to trip you and I. Almost word for word, step by step. He's setting Uriah up for disaster, and when Uriah resists, he finds a way around it. Anyways, so back to verse 14. In the morning, he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his Lord, with the servants of David. But he did not go down to his house. This guy is so honorable, not even drunk, he would violate his bond with the army. Talk about an honorable man. Verse 14, in the morning it happened that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. Now let's pause here for a second. Back to battle. So he writes a letter, and he seals that letter, and he gives it to Uriah himself to take back to Joab. And he wrote in the letter, verse 15, saying, set Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retreat from him, that he may be struck down and die. Uriah stands before the king, honorably asking to go back to the battlefield, and David says, "You are dismissed. You may go back to the battlefield. Oh, by the way, would you take this letter with you and deliver it to Joab?" And the very letter is the death sentence against him. He gets to the battlefield, delivers it to General Joab. Joab reads it and he can't believe it, but he'll obey. Verse 16, so it was that while Joab besieged the city, that he assigned Uriah with Joab, and some of the people of the servants of David fell, and Uriah the Hittite died also. And Joab sent and told David all the things concerning the war. So he sent a letter back to David, and charged the messenger, saying, "When you have finished telling the matter of the war to the king, if it happens that the king's wrath rises, and he says to you, 'Why did you approach so near to the city when you fought? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall?'" In other words, Joab knows that he lost soldiers. David is a man of war. He's going to get upset and say, "Why did you lose 100 men? That was unnecessary." So Joab, look at evil working its way, politics working its way. Joab says, "Okay, here's my ace in the hole. This is or trump card. When the king gets up, mention to him that Uriah died, and everything will be fine. If it happens that the king's wrath rises and he says to you, 'Why did you approach so near the city when you fought? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall?'" Verse 21. "Who struck Abimelech, the son of Jerubasheth? Was it not a woman who cast a piece of millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you not